Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to today's West Cork Literary Festival event. Today's event features Dutch writer Miek Zwamborn and her translator Michele Hutchison discussing Miek's book, The Seaweed Collector's Handbook with Rachel Andrews. Michele is in Amsterdam, Rachel and I are in Cork, and Miek was due to join us from the Isle of Mull in Scotland, but due to Wi-Fi problems has recorded her answers separately. But we're all delighted to be here with you today in one form or another. This is the second in a series of 4 new Dutch writing events supported by the Nederlands Letterenfonds Dutch Foundation for Literature. These events take place online at 7 p.m. every Monday during July 2021 as part of this year's West Cork Literary Festival. Last Monday's event featured Dutch writer Connie Paulman and Irish writer Nuala O'Connor, and that interview is available to rewatch on our West Cork Literary Festival YouTube channel. Over the next 2 Mondays, we will have novelists Jaap Robin and Lise Schmidt reading from their novel Summer Brother and the Melting, and finally climate journalist Jelmer Mommers and his book How Are We Going to Explain This? All 4 of our new Dutch writing events are free and we would love to see you there. We have a full schedule of events throughout the month of July, and these are now on our website, westcorkmusic.ie/LF programme. Our virtual events will be a mix of live Zoom events and events pre-recorded in Bantry. We hope to see you at some of these events and we look forward to gathering in Bantry again soon. All of our events are made possible by the support of our funders, the Arts Council of Ireland, Cork County Council and their Library and Art Services, Fáilte Ireland and the Creative Europe programme of the European Union. We would encourage you all to buy your books from your local bookshop wherever you are, or to support our festival bookshop at Bantry Bookshop. Our interviewer today is Rachel Andrews. Rachel's essays and criticisms have appeared in the London Review of Books, The Stinging Fly, Gorse, Banshee, The White Review, The Irish Times and The Dublin Review. In 2018, she was the runner-up in the inaugural Hubert Butler Essay Prize, and in 2017 was shortlisted for the Fitzcarraldo Essay Prize and the Notting Hill Essay Prize. Rachel lives and works in Cork in Ireland. And I'm going to hand you over to Rachel now.
Welcome everyone to this pre-recorded event as part of the West Cork Literary Festival. I'm going to be talking today to Michele Hutchison, a translator who has translated the book, which I'm going to hold up now, The Seaweed Collector's Handbook by Miek Zwamborn. So I'm just going to introduce Miek and Michele, and myself and Michele will have a little chat. Miek is an author, translator and artist. Her practice often delves into archival collections, drawing on the suggestive possibility of historical materials, letters, texts, objects and artifacts in order to create semi-factual narratives. She lives on the island of Mull, and she has published 2 novels, poetry collections, and the non-fiction title, The Seaweed Collector's Handbook, which is translated into English by Michele and published by Profile Books in June 2021. She's from the Netherlands, but as I said, lives and works on the Isle of Mull in Scotland. Michele Hutchison is a literary translator from Dutch and French into English. As a former commissioning editor at various top publishing houses, she has translated more than 20 books from Dutch and 1 from French. In 2020, she won the Vondel Translation Prize for her translation of Stage 4 by Sander Collard and the International Booker Prize together with author Marieke Lucas Reineveld for The Discomfort of Evening. Her translation into English of Miek Zwamborn's The Seaweed Collector's Handbook was published by Profile Books in June 2021, and Michele lives in Amsterdam. Welcome to the West Cork Literary Festival.
Thank you.
So we were just chatting there. Would we maybe start with a short reading from the book?
Yeah. Let me read the beginning to you, the very start, just so you get a feel of what the book's like.
Yeah.
So also inside there's all these little illustrations and things. So it's really a book that you want to just pick up, and it's not just like lots of text, but it's beautifully illustrated as well. So it starts with a chapter called Underwater Forests. Walking to the Scottish tidal island of Airade at ebb tide, I came across an immense chunk of seaweed beached in the bay. Its dark leaves and stems contrasted strongly with the pale sand. The seaweed looked lively and spiraled like an Archimedean screw. The outgoing tide had tugged the leaves open wide. A sturdy stem emerged from a large gold-studded ball, not round but flat and wide, bordered with amber-coloured ruffles. The stem became smoother as it progressed, and ended in a leathery leaf that was split into 21 long, ragged strips, each pointing in a different direction. My gaze slid back along the milled edges of the stem. The seaweed plant shone as though it had been polished and seemed to be filled with a strange force. It appeared boundless. Although torn from its colony and washed ashore, it showed no signs of decay. I knelt down and ran my fingers through the strands. The stalks and leaves felt firm and were cooler than I expected. Okay, so that's where Miek's adventure with seaweed starts.
Ah, and Michele, this is the third, if I'm correct, this is the third iteration of the book. It was first published in Dutch and then German before it came out in English.
That's right, yes, yeah.
And how did you come to the project then?
I'd been translating Miek's poetry, I think, before this. So I already worked with her on other translations. So when this was sold, that I was the first person they came to, which was wonderful because, yeah, I really like working with Miek.
Yeah. And I think I read you saying that it came to you in the German, did it? Or was there aspects, some parts of the German came in? Were in the...
No, I got the German edition. I think the German edition was published before the Dutch one.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
And did you translate directly from the Dutch or from the
I
German?
translated from the Dutch, and we added material, so it's not a direct translation of. It's a bigger book than the Dutch version, in fact. So the editor had all kinds of suggestions on things that could be added.
Okay.
Yeah,
so they kind of sit in parallel then, actually.
Yeah. So this is a kind of extended edition.
Yeah. And can you tell me a bit about the translation process? Because I know that you went to Mull as part of it.
Yeah, I did, yes. So when you translate a book like this, it's quite hard if you haven't seen the seaweed. So, for example, that section I just read, I couldn't really understand what this thing was I was describing, and I really wanted to see one. You know, this kind of monstrous, bizarre, like almost spiritual piece of seaweed. I went to Mull and I stayed with Miek, and one of the first things we did was we went to the beach, and luckily there had been like a big tide and with strong winds, and it was strewn with these kind of weird monsters. So then I immediately got the sense of, okay, I understand why Miek is so obsessed by this seaweed, and yeah.
And had it been a while since had it been a long time since you engaged with seaweed, I suppose?
As a child, I mean, I was always poking around if I got the chance, poking around in rock pools and looking at sea creatures and anything to do with the sea. And I love walking along the beach, but I didn't really know what all the different seaweeds were. So that's something I got to learn while translating the book.
Yeah. And you were saying in, I think it was a blog post, that you were talking about this line actually that's there at the start of the book where she talks, or you've translated it as a chunk. You've used the word chunk.
Yeah.
Really interesting, because you weren't sure whether that was the word, and then sort of circled around lots of different words and then finally landed on the word chunk and stuck with it.
They were really large separate stalks with like a kind of head on it, maybe like beach sunflowers or something. So they're not and I was thinking of seaweed in terms of lots of strands all knotted together, you know, the kind of bladderwrack you often see. So I couldn't understand how these were separate bits, but they were.
So like actually seeing it then helped you formulate
find the right words for the description. I mean, that was the same throughout the book with all the seaweeds mentioned.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference if you know what you're writing about.
Yeah. And did you go diving as well?
Yes. So one of the things was that not all the seaweeds get kind of beached, so you can't just find them all by walking around. You have to go diving to see some of them, which we did. Well, snorkeling. So I borrowed a wetsuit from Miek. The water's freezing there. It's like 9 degrees. This was in August, so peak summer, but absolutely freezing cold water. And we dived and we picked all kinds of seaweeds. And we had 2 huge like bags, and we took them back, and then we put them all in Miek's bath to wash them. And then we sorted through them all. And we dried a lot, and I brought stuff back with me, so I still have some of it. So this is a bit of kelp. From our dive, and this is I've got carrageen and this. I brought this back, so it's lovely to still have these little souvenirs.
So it's really like, it's so interesting to hear about the process that, you know, the translation process is much more than just sitting at your desk, I suppose, with the Dutch version and then translating it. It's much more
It's the same for any
expansive
book.
process.
Yeah, you really need to get to know your material. So I'm often involved in researching the background to whatever I'm translating.
Yeah. And in terms, because there's I mean, the book is full of facts, really. I mean, the book sort of spans sort of scientific facts, historical facts, literature, art, all of that. So in terms of then any research that you needed to do, were you taking all of that from Miek, or did you have any sort of hand in that as well?
Oh, I had to check everything as well. So I wanted to make sure I translated all the references correctly. So it meant going down an endless number of fascinating kind of rabbit holes. So there's a whole section about old films of seaweed, or there's the fabrics in the V&A Museum, or the seaweed fabrics. And then once you start looking those things up, there's so much beautiful material that it's hard just to not spend days like doing that and not the translation.
Yeah.
So that kept happening.
One of the facts I thought was fascinating was about the seaweed living in space.
Yeah. Okay. But it was possible to, seaweed's really tough stuff. Yeah.
Survived on the outside of the International Space Station or something.
Yeah. And they were seeing what kind of conditions it could survive under. Yeah. And I mean, even when it's torn loose from the rocks or from whatever it's grown on, the substrate, seaweed carries on living for quite a long time.
Wow, yeah. Do you want to maybe try read the second reading?
Yeah. So this is a historical piece in the book.
Yeah.
It's about the kind of myths and legends surrounding seaweed. In The Sea and Its Wonders, Mary and Elizabeth Kirby describe a terrifying sea monster. In ancient travel accounts, sailors often claimed to have spotted sea snakes. No one ever got close enough to catch one of these snakes until one day a ship, whose name has been forgotten, was crossing the ocean. The weather was calm and the captain looked out over the sea. He suddenly noticed a large sea snake. Its body moved up and down through the waves and appeared dozens of meters long. Its giant head was clearly visible, as was the lion's mane that hung around its neck. Okay, there's a picture.
Yeah.
Within a few minutes, the entire crew was on deck observing the monster. The captain was determined not to let it slip like captains before him. He sent some of his men out in a rowing boat to capture the snake with a length of rope and some rifles. The sailors rowed until they came close to the animal. It was a massive beast that kept diving down and ducking under, but they managed to tie the rope around its neck, and uniting their forces, they dragged the sea snake back to the ship. Once hoisted on deck, the animal turned out to be so covered in shells and other sea creatures that it was not easy to see what kind of animal it was. After the captain had stabbed his knife into it, it transpired that it was no more than a monstrous piece of seaweed, 30 meters long and 1.2 meters across.
Amazing.
It's wonderful.
And that original book, The Sea and Its Wonders, did you then have a look at that yourself?
No, I didn't in that case, actually, no. It's a book from 1871 and I wouldn't have been able to get a copy of it from here.
I mean, the research in the book is amazing. It goes back so far and it spans so many countries. And the other thing, when you were on the other thing, I suppose it's at the end of towards the end of the book, she's two beautiful chapters, actually. The first one is about all of the recipes.
Yes, yeah.
Amazing. I mean, they look actually like very tempting. And then the very last one then is, she calls it portraits. So these are Miek's illustrations, are they?
Yeah, she did those herself. Yeah, beautiful, aren't they?
Beautiful,
yeah, she's stunning.
So you were saying that you made some of the recipes when you
were... So one of the things we did while I was there was like check the recipes because they hadn't been checked. So we made everything. So after this like huge expedition to get with all the buckets of seaweed in the bath, we started cooking. So that was the next thing, and checking the amounts in all the recipes. And yeah, that was absolutely wonderful. And it was delicious, I must say. I hadn't eaten much seaweed before, only really in Asian cooking and not.
Wow. And did you do all the recipes? Because there's quite a few.
I don't think we made the potato soup. I think that was a fairly simple one, but I think we did the rest. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And was there anyone that was your favorite?
Well, I really like the one with where you wrap the fish in big sheets of seaweed. It looks so wonderful. So that's this kelp stuff. So you take big sheets of this, and it keeps, so instead of foil, it keeps the fish really moist and gives it a kind of salty tang.
Yeah. And did you have to make any addition or sort of changes to the recipes, or were they good?
I think we just tweaked a bit. We tried different, like there's one where there were kind of biscuits, and we tried different versions to see which proportions tasted the best.
Yeah.
When they had a bit too strong a flavor or not enough flavor. Yeah, so there was that. The carrageen and cream, I think you have that in Ireland as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the Irish moss recipe. That's like a kind of creme caramel. That's this.
And have you managed to make any of the recipes since you?
I made that one on the day the book was published. That was my own like tiny little publishing launch in my kitchen, and I brought back all the seaweed. So there's a really simple one where you put seaweed with spaghetti. I've had that a few times as well. That's really nice.
Yeah. And the one in the video as well is quite simple. The one that
she makes a pesto in the video. Yeah, I haven't tried that actually, but yeah.
I was thinking, oh well, I could do that.
Yeah, it looked good, didn't it?
Getting the seaweed, yeah. And how long did you spend with Miek and Michele?
I was there for a week. I could have gone for like 2 months if I'd have had the choice. I'd have stayed there for like forever. It was amazing.
Yeah. Amazing experience. Yeah. So do you think like you're quite expert in seaweed yourself now?
The problem with being a translator is that you move on to the next book, and then you're researching whatever is involved in that book, and then so things move to the back of your memory storage, unfortunately. So you're a temporary expert on things. Yeah.
And so would you like to read from the last section that we talked about?
Yeah, the last bit was one of Miek's experiences. It's kind of a very poetic experience that she has on Mull. When a hailstorm breaks out over the beach, the hail starts by filling up the ripples in the sand. The waves from earlier are now marked out, a wave of hailstones above a wave made of sand. Wind lashes the hail low across the mud flats towards the surf. Seaweed blocks its path, causing a pile-up. I watch the bouncing balls. On the windy side, the seaweed turns increasingly white. The hail accumulates until letters seem to appear, and as yet unreadable text is written on the beach in compressed ice. Each piece of beach seaweed generates a different font. Kelp stretches letters into capitals, while strands of rockweed make notes in italics. Larger hailstones are attracted to larger algae, smaller hailstones to smaller algae. When I walk back half an hour later, the text has moved along a little, and the white shadowy edges around the seaweed have been erased.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really typical Miek, like seeing it with such an artist's eye.
Yeah. And you were saying at the start that there were kind of some additions to the English version. So
there's more about seaweed farming. So there's more, It's a while ago and I can't remember all the editions, but for example, the publisher published a book about seaweed farming, which we then read, and then we added like more information on that. And there was some art that was added as well. I remember the Tove Jansson. Tove Jansson wasn't in the original.
Right.
Yeah, in the Moomins. And she was also an artist. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really interesting anecdote. Yeah. I found the stuff about the farming very interesting as well, like written about the potential regarding, I suppose, sort of climate change, etc.
Exactly, and there's a great message of hope in there about how seaweed can help us and help feed stock and all kinds of things.
Yeah. And also saying like that if the world, runs out of food, that there actually could be like seaweed could provide food for people.
Yeah, it can, food for us and food for animals.
Yeah. Amazing, really. I mean, do you know much about Miek's project on Mull, the
Kfelaar Studies? Yeah, so I stayed in that little kind of house that she built for the residents. So artists go and stay there and work on projects that are kind of connected to the conservation area.
Yeah.
They've got an Instagram account, and I think they've probably got a website where you can find more information.
Yeah. It's connecting people. It seems to be the idea of connecting people back to nature, and again, sort of working with nature. Then
absolutely, yeah.
It's really, yeah. Which is what really the Seaweed book seems to be about as well. Yeah. And the other projects you'd worked with with Miek on, was that anything to do with seaweed, or was that very different?
No, I mean we did a seaweed poem, but she writes nature poems, which are also really wonderful. Hopefully they'll be published in English at some point.
Yeah.
Need a few more of them.
Yeah. This is her first book in English, is it?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh wow, fantastic! Yeah, what a beautiful book to bring out in English. Yeah. And so, was there anything else that you found, I suppose, that you weren't anticipating as part of the translation process with this particular book? I suppose having to go to Mull was...
Going to Mull was so special, and the moment that I put my head in the water and saw the whole underwater forest and this whole other world was just mind-blowing. Yeah. So that was a memory I'll treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you translating? Do you normally translate from Dutch to English? Is it?
I do mainly, because I live in Holland, so I get most jobs from Dutch into English.
Yeah. So you moved on to another Dutch to English project now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm translating a first novel called We Are Light by Gerda Blees, which just won the EU Literary Prize.
Really? Oh wow.
So that'll be published, I think, in a year or a year and a half, I'd say, in English by World Editions.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to the Cork Literary Festival. I'm really happy that I can do this reading together with Michele Hutchison, my dear translator.
So the poem is called Submerged, and it's a poem we worked on together, a prose poem.
This is the poem that I wrote after that encounter with this immense kelp. Anderzees. Wij zijn groot en alom, zwieren los van elkaar. Wij bestaan nooit uit ik, wij zijn laminaria. Geen zwerm, kudde of school, toch altijd met veel. Talrijk en talloos, ontelbaar verspreid. Wij spannen samen, innig verstrikt of separaat waaiend, in bossen vol vliezige vingers.
Submerged. We are large and ubiquitous. We sway and untangle. We are never made up of an eye. We are laminaria, not a flock, a herd, or a school. We are always legion. Numerous and innumerable, a myriad spread. We stretch together, deeply entangled, or waving separately in clumps of fleshy fingers.
Wij staan rechtop in de stroom, blijven zuiver van loof zonder tak of stam, onder spiegels van water. Wieren wij uit, niet dun gezaaid, maar in grote getalen, uit onze hoofdbladen groeien lovertjes. Ons loof is gegolfd. Wij dragen roesjes langs zij. Wij zijn gelatineus, wij zijn bruin van kleur, in schemerlicht ogen we zwart en aan land in schellak gezet, purper besuikerd.
We stand upright in the current, remain free of leaves without branch or trunk. Beneath mirrors of water we wave, not sparse but amassed. Sequins sprout from our main blades. Our foliage is corrugated, our borders ruched. We are gelatinous. We are brown. In dim light we look black, and on land, shellacked, sugared with purple.
Wij zijn gymnastisch van aard, ontspringen uit stelen, dragen snel blad dat vorkt en vingert. Wij arceren de zee, zijn tralie wezen we gedrogen en sluiten op en in. Mild zijn wij voor hen die wij kennen en ons onbeschadigd laten.
We are gymnastically inclined, arise from stems, rapidly bear leaves that finger and fork. We cross-hatch the sea, are latticed beings. We tolerate and close up and in. We are mild towards those that know us and leave us unharmed.
Bevochtig ons. Wij hebben drijflichamen. Wij zijn meegaand van aard. Wij zien het gebeuren. Wij grijpen niet in. Wij betijen. Wij passen ons aan, zijn ontwikkelbaar. Deze tijd is onze tijd. Dit water, ons water.
Dampen us, we have floats. We are accommodating by nature. We watch things happen, don't intervene, we let be, we adapt, we can develop. This time is our time, this water our water. We follow the waves, are opportunists, we endure silt, penetrating rays of light, acidification, and the air that dehydrates us at low tide. That's the first half of the poem.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Michele. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, hi, Miek. So just wanted to ask you a few questions about the book, I suppose, how it came about in the first place, and if seaweed has been something that you've been interested in researching for a long time. I'm guessing you have a lot of interaction with seaweed living on Mull, but there's so much research in the book. It spans sort of historical research and anecdotes, and then there's the scientific information, and then obviously art and literature. I was really interested in all of those areas. So I'm just wondering how it came about, and then how you just sort of went about the research. Like, were there certain themes you wanted to look at, or was it like diving down a rabbit hole and moving out from there?
In the summer of 2015, I went with my partner to Mull, Isle of Mull on the west coast of Scotland, for a hike. And after climbing the only Munro, the Ben Moor, we were heading for Erraid. Erraid is a peninsula on the southern tip of the Ross of Mull. And just before entering the island, it was ebb tide, and on the tidal flat was this immense seaweed. It had kind of a golden bowl, and there was this stipe with rushes along, and this, I don't know, many long blades, and it was the size that struck me, and the color, and the shine of it, and the way it was spread out by the water. And that week I wrote the first poem about seaweed, or I tried to read from seaweed out. And then a few months later I was invited to Germany to read from my translated novel The Duimsprong, translated by Bettine Bach. And it was organized in a 5-star hotel. But Judith Shalansky, the German writer, was there as well to present her Natuurkunde series, beautiful books, portraits about animals and plants. And we did a reading together, and we swam together in the swimming pool. And then after a few days she asked me if I wanted to write one of the new portraits for that series about my favorite animal, and I don't have really a favorite animal, so I asked if it could be about seaweed, and yeah, that was the start of the seaweed works. I had no knowledge at all about seaweed. I knew it from the Netherlands, of course, washed up a little bit near the dikes. But it started. The research started here by finding as many as possible, by drying them, pressing them, eating them, trying to draw them. The first part for me was to understand more about where they grow and when they grow and how they grow. And then I started to read about them, of course, and discovered all this amazing artworks and poetry and other works like early photography, where seaweed was the main character.
And you also include some of your own illustrations in the book, and maybe you could just tell me a little bit about that. Was it very important that you illustrated the book in the first place? Obviously, it's very heavily illustrated with the works of others, photography, some etchings, and then you have your own work as well, particularly at the end of the book, beautiful drawings.
yeah, to me, it felt like when I'm writing about them and finding all these, photos and paintings and drawings made by other artists. There was slowly there was this longing for me to portrait them myself, as if, that felt quite important to try that, so I made these 12 portraits in watercolor, and meanwhile now a few years later, I'm now making ink. I try to make ink from seaweed and watercolor from seaweed and charcoal from seaweed. So I'm still making drawings, but in another way now. Also less precise, because for the book they had to be very precise, and now I would love to draw as the seaweed moves underwater, whereas I try to draw on the water, which is quite hard.
And then you also talk about the different words that you find in different languages for seaweed. And one thing I thought was really interesting, you were saying that there's a language far from the sea, which is high up on the Swiss Alps, and that's where the language lives at least, and there's actually no word for seaweed in that language.
Yeah, the story about the seaweed, the word that does not exist in the Alps because they simply never saw it and never used it, is connected to a more old fear for people from things underwater. So in the retro-Romansh language, seaweed is called like sea monster or mermaid, but then the bad ones or the ugly ones or the dangerous ones, and they still warn their children when they are doing the dishes. They say like, be careful, otherwise you will go with the water. You will disappear with the water in the hole in the sink. So there's this connection with the danger of the sea and the seaweed very strongly.
Can you tell me a bit about the recipes as well? Have you been cooking long with seaweed? And do you have any favorite recipe?
Yeah, also from the beginning try to distinguish the different taste and finding ways to cook, the best ways to cook. So maybe one of my favorites is making biscuits, making very, very, very simple biscuits, but instead of they're sweet, they are quite savory. And when Michele was with me, we made many variations till we finally got way less sugar and plenty of seaweed in there. There's also, and I cooked that for you and filmed that, there's a lovely recipe by Fiona Bird, and that is a pesto made by dulse and rocket, and it's very, very simple. You don't need anything else than just these two ingredients and a lemon and some olive oil, and you can do it outside and spread it on your sandwich or so. It's nice to, when cooking seaweed, change a lot from the fresh state. When you do it in a pan, it often becomes another color of green, or the taste gets really boost. So it's great. I find it quite exciting to try all these different seaweeds during my walks, but also in the kitchen.
And I think I read somewhere in the book that you say you write underwater, which is fascinating. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about that.
That's a good question. I wrote a little bit about that question. The sea begins somewhere else each day. I head for the surf in a straight line. The waves of retreating tide have whipped up the sand. My feet sink into it. I wade through knee-deep water and feel the cold sea seep in through the holes in the knees and elbows of my wetsuit. Beyond the island of Bladderwrack, I make my first crawl strokes. In the sea, one rides without chair legs, footstool, and desk. There's no slow work, no more staring out of the window or eating apples. As an underwater writer, you have to discard everything, be submissive, strap on lead blocks, otherwise you will float back up to the surface and all the newly written words will ebb away.
And the Volgan studies, it's a sort of artist residency, and there's a lot of interaction with different, I suppose, areas. You said you worked with biologists, anthropologists, ecologists, etc. Maybe you could tell me a bit about Volgan studies and its aim and what you've done and what you hope to do, I suppose.
Yeah, so Volgan Studies is a study place that we founded in 2016, and it is a place where we work together, my partner Rutger Emmelkamp and me, with poets, artists, natural scientists, composers, many different people. All the projects are about this environment. So it's peatland, and it is an old Celtic rainforest, and it is a shoreline, and very weather related, very rough surroundings. We make publications. We do exhibitions in the barn. We organize concerts and guided tours and lectures. This Saturday we will organize a fish skin tanning workshop. And so many hands-on projects, but also more philosophical sometimes, more environmental. But it is a tentacular collaboration with people that come to us. Sometimes it looks a little bit like a residency, but we also work online with people from all over the world, and with the local people, of course. That's very important to us, that they can share in what we discover here, and that they become part of the project as well.
And then finally, you say at some point in the book that the house in Mull replaced the idea for you of a career as a lighthouse keeper. So were you planning to be a lighthouse keeper, and how would that have manifested?
Well, but that career was not possible right after I got my papers for a lighthouse keeper, because they all became automatic lighthouses. So there were no lighthouse keepers needed anymore. And I think now the idea to become one, sitting very by myself in such a isolated place, that won't fit anymore. I think I really love the way we are now surrounded by many creative people, and how we can also contribute to the landscape. And I think now just looking out over the sea, being locked up in such a beautiful building, That's not me anymore. We are on the beach of Knockvolligan at the Isle of Mull, and I'm picking dulse, Palmaria palmata, which means hand, and it has also the shape of a hen. And this is one of my favorite seaweed, and we will cook some pesto with it. So it only grows on exposed rocks like here. And yeah, I take a few more leaves and then we will start to cook. So I brought some few things from the garden. That is some rocket wrapped in a wet towel and a garlic, fresh garlic. And I will start up chopping the dulse now and the rocket and the garlic. Then I mix it with oil and a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of parmesan, and that's it. I forgot a spoon, so take a razor shell to mix it. I think it'll be fine. Alright. And I'll try if it's good. Thank you for inviting me to the Cork Literary Festival. I'm very happy that we could be here together, Michele and me, and all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for tuning in, and huge thanks to Miek, to Michele, and to Rachel for today's conversation, and to the Dutch Foundation for Literature for supporting these events. And I hope that you will all tune in to some of the other West Cork Literary Festival events happening over the course of July. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's conversation. Thank you.